I want to write a story about two little beings who grew up in a village that was built on old battlegrounds. And so you know that energy of hate is in everything around them, including all from older generations up to their parents. And they're the only two children in the village, and the newest breed who has evolved to the point of having empathy, and so they can feel for others, and they can feel the stained and sustained suffering that was the result of war that their elders didn't necessarily start but partook in. But these two are merely children, like 7 years young, and so they really aren't sure how to make sense of what is actually happening, but then again they feel it, and they feel responsible. And then there's this well, and for some reason they're always pulled to the well, and that pull was so much more than just like wanting to rebel against the rules. It was almost an innocent instinct, but counteracted by primal intimidation, because of course it was the one thing that the elders tell them that they mustn't go near. They say it's not for children, because it's dirty and full of trash and remains of the past. And this is where the villagers threw their waste and have always thrown their waste. The elders remind the children daily that if they tamper with the well in any way, shape, or form, that they will be beaten to death. And so, one night, filling up with the reaching of a full moon, the little boy and the little girl lying in separate rooms are unable to drift into nothingness, and so, restless and highly sensitive to that voice within, they both pulled out. Being outside at this time, it wasn't overbearing because it was so bright and they could see everything apparent. Believe it or not, they both in a half-hazy state magically appear before one another. Without even saying a word, they begin walking off the beaten paths of yesterday's map, and with no question as to where they are going, nothing was said. And as they arrived, he boosted her up on the edge, and she put out her hand and helped him up. They sat, defining the meaning of friends. And it was like they knew that there was no other option. Neither of them had to ask one another whether or not this was right. They were just still, now immune to the rotting and the shade of black, darkened as their sight dug into how deep that hole was to their imagination. And they knew that as they died together, they would never feel so alone again. They had no chance of understanding why those who raised them acted as they did. They remember the old woman left to weep and how even she sought revenge. And somehow they did it. I felt something change from within.
The village had been stained with the hate ever since the attack, and the blood and the fence that was built all around, and the guilt that they felt for the filth that was filling up the well, and the sounds that they heard, and the ground, and the dogs, and the meadow so young, and the devil as they watched the smoke cloud the sun, and the bucket that they hid under, and that little hole that they both could see everything from so clearly. And as it hit, neither of them threw a fit. Brand new eyes observing with no complaint or judgment on it. A promise was made, and it was his idea to have her lay on top of him as he dangled his head over the edge and let his neck begin to scrape against the inner lip of the brick. When his shoulder blades were no longer supported by solid matter, he had her wrap her arms around his ribs and put her head on his chest as he began to use his hands to pull them closer to that point where resistance would give in. And in the fall, there was no screaming, they were still, no sense of separation. The breathing in perfect synchrony, fast yes, but so in rhythm, heart pump clean blood in, the most alive ever felt in pause, mid-air preceding the fearless expectation of death. And as they hit, they were done. Nothing, unconscious, floating face down. They awoke at the exact same time, sopping wet, drained on a white shore that never felt waves until that day. And the people greeted them as one. The people thanked them. The water, perfect blue. The sky, perfect blue. And a sun that looked like a burning hole with no past and no purpose. And the old woman's smile was permanent, as if revenge had never needed to exist. Her roots dug deep enough to feel the instant force flow up and out. And as she picked the flowers that grew and distributed them to the others as if they knew what for, there was no regret, none, nothing said, nothing but a story that didn't need to be told. Off the beaten path. Off beaten path. Off beaten path. Beaten path. Off beaten
I wanna tell a story about